On September
El
29,
29 de setembre de
1970,
1970,
Polly Feistiger
Polly
wrote to her
Feistiger
brothers-in-law
escrivió
in
als seus
Valls,
companys.
I have the
Tinc el
duty
deure
to
que el
let the
món
world
conegui
know the
l'home
man
també,
too, not
no
only
sols
the
l'artista.
artist. Hello everybody, my name is Olga Gerbeltran, and I am the person in charge of the Roberto Gerard documentary found that is kept in the Institut d'Estudis Vallencs, in the Catalan town of Valls, where Roberto Gerard i Ottenbalder was born on September 25, 1896. My contribution in this conference takes advantage of the fact that this year one of the questions that will be analyzed is the influence of the exile in his work. We want to contribute to the knowledge of the composer from the most intimate Gerard, the one that appears in the correspondence that he or his wife Polly exchanged with his brothers, Carlos and Ferran, two important figures in his life, and with whom he will remain linked. In the case of Ferran, because he was the link with Catalonia beyond friendships, and in the case of Carlos, because he shared with him the overwhelming experience of exile. This correspondence comes to us thanks to the families of the two brothers, who kept it for 80 years. Some letters reached us in 2008 from Mexico, and the others arrived last December from Tarragona, a city very close to Valls. Throughout the letters, we learn about family matters such as birth, death, job and residence changes, business, but we also learn what Roberto himself thought about his music, about the commissions, or about the reception of his work by the public. Also, his wife, Polly, talked through the family letters about the effort that Roberto Gerard put into composition, what Carlos thought about the music from his exile in Mexico, or how Ferran managed, as best as he could, from Spain, what his brother Roberto asked him to do. With the 2008 donation, we received the first letters from exile, and through them we were able to access a lot of information that complemented what we already had, and provided a very intimate, very personal, and above all, very sincere perspective. It is evident that Roberto Gerard's genius cannot be a simple exception in the family, but also the environment in which he is educated influenced a lot. If we get to know his siblings better, we will also be able to understand the whole situation better. Let's start with the second one, Carlos. Carlos Gerard y Ottenbalder was a political personality of the Republican period. He was a prominent member of the Socialist Union of Catalonia, and a great friend of personalities such as the politician and writer Ventura Gasol. When the Civil War broke out, he was deputy and secretary of the parliament. In August 1936, the Minister of Culture Gasol appointed him Commissioner of the Generalitat in Montserrat, one of the most symbolic places in Catalonia, to take care of the sanctuary and prevent its destruction. In Montserrat, state personalities such as Manuel Azaña, Lluís Companys, the sculptor Viladomat, the painter Anglada Camarasa, or the family of Dr. Trueta, a great friend of the Gerard brothers and another of the exiles in England. Also, in Montserrat died his wife, Teresa Ortet. Even in Montserrat, it was held one of the last sessions of the Cortes of the Spanish Republic, presided by Negrín. With these antecedents, it is more than evident that, in spite of not having blood crimes, Carlos Gerard had to undertake his mother Maria Ottenbalder, and his two children, Carlos and Maria Teresa, the exile, first towards France, and once the Second World War advanced, the passage towards Switzerland, his second nationality. Finally, they settled in Mexico in July 1951. Carlos Gerard is precisely the protagonist of one of his brother's first compositions, La Sonatina Carlos, 1914. His ancestry is important in his brother. When he introduces himself to Felipe Pedrell, he confesses that it was his brother Carlos, a great piano player, who recommended him to contact the maestro. As he too, like all the brothers, had a good education in languages, in Mexico he was able to devote himself to literary translation. For example, he was the translator of the work of the Nobel Prize winner Günter Grass. In fact, his translation of the Tin Drum from 1963 was so prestigious that it was not revised again until 2009. The bond between the two brothers is extraordinary. Both shared a few years of study in Switzerland, Roberto with 12 years and Carlos with 10. Proof of this is this beautiful letter written by Roberto in 1962, when he returns to the Swiss city of Zofingen on the occasion of his work, and describes to his brother the feelings he has 50 years after the first stay. This understanding can also be seen in the correspondence we have preserved. 26 letters sent by Roberto and Poldi to Carlos and his family between 1957 and 1969. 35 letters sent by Carlos to Roberto between 1959 and 1969. And 20 more letters between Carlos and Ruth Weber, Carlos' second wife, and the widow Poldi between 1970 and 1984. From here, at least for us, the silence begins. There is no more correspondence between the families. As can be seen, the problem is that the correspondence did not begin until 1957. So we continue in Valls with a very important gap in the early years of exile, the decade of the 40s and early 50s. The situation was solved last December 2020, very recently, when Ferran Gerard Masqué gave us the correspondence between his father and his uncle Roberto. Now, we had in Valls letters from May 7, 1939, that allowed us to follow the Gerard's path from the reception at Meudon Vallfredy to Medingley Road, all the way through the mythical Adams Road house. Ferran, the youngest, was apparently much more pragmatic than his other two brothers. He also studied commerce in Switzerland, and was the one who continued the wine trade business in Valls. Ferran did not hold any political office or any prominent intervention during the Civil War. As his brothers, he enjoyed dual Swiss and Spanish nationality, and with friends on the right and on the left, it was not necessary for him to go into exile, and he kept the business until the end of the 1950s. From this date onwards, he began to focus on the care of his wife's family's agricultural properties, which included a large farmhouse, La Masia de Plana, in the middle of the Prades Mountains. This is a bucolic space, frequently visited by Roberto and Poldi, and which they also rented as a summer residence to Swiss or English clients. As for the correspondence, now we will have in Valls an idea of the first decade of the exile. At the moment, the documents are still pending cataloging and digitalizing, but the inventory already gives us the following results. We have 55 letters sent by Roberto to Ferran between May 1939 and January 1968, and 65 letters from Fernando to Roberto between June 1939 and December 1969. Once Roberto dies, the relationship continues, but there is more and more distance between Poldi and her brothers-in-law. In the case of the Valls family, we only have 17 letters and telegrams between February 1970 and September 1973. Obviously, they have not all been preserved, but we cannot be sure that they will not come to us in a new donation, or that copies are not preserved in the Cambridge archives, but in Valls the latest date is 1973. As for the first glance we've made of the contents, it is very clarifying that the first letters between the brothers are all written in French, at least until 1944, and some of them even show the marks of the Spanish censorship in search of hidden messages. As for the content, all of them present interesting aspects, even those that deal with family matters more than the musical ones, since they are possibly the ones that provide more indirect information of the complexity of the exile or on the joy of the reunion. It also appears very detailed the management that Ferran had to do of all the documents, books, scores, furniture, personal effects, etc., that remained in Barcelona, and on the part of Roberto, he speaks openly of his work as a composer, but also of the strong character of his wife. In the letters, it is clear how Poldi and Roberto enjoyed his work, how they cared for it, as if it were really their children, their family. We trust that at the beginning of the next, 2022, we will be able to have all the second correspondence well catalogued, and that the relationship can be consulted in the website of the Institut d'Estudis Vallencs, as it can be done now with the one we have of Carlos Gerard. Thank you very much. Don't hesitate to contact us at iev@iev.cat or visit our website at www.iev.cat.